When lawmakers return on Capitol Hill next week, they're going to have till September 30th to pass legislation to prevent a potential government shutdown. And according to reports, Speaker Johnson and the GOP leadership are discussing a plan to move a short-term funding bill, possibly even next week. And that would potentially extend the government funding into March of 2025. And part of the discussion that's being proposed is the SAVE Act, which is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. This is a bill that would ensure that only citizens can vote in federal elections. But it's an uphill battle, and putting the SAVE Act in there might make it even more difficult than what it already may be. So joining me now to discuss this by phone is Congressman Ralph Norman. He serves on several committees, including the Rules Committee and the Budget Committee. He serves the 5th Congressional District of the great state of South Carolina. Congressman Norman, thank you for joining us again on Washington Watch.
Well, great to be with you, Jody. Thank you so much.
Well, it's always an honor to have you, and good to hear your voice. Wish I could see your face, that smiling face, but good to hear your voice. All right, let's talk about what's coming up here. We understand that Speaker Johnson said that the SAVE Act is going to be a big part of this conversation with the potential CR and all the budgeting issues coming up. And this is not just appeasing, if I can use that word, Freedom Caucus, which of course you're a part of, but a lot of other members of the Republican conference support this as well. Can you share with us why this is such an important piece of legislation for those who may not understand just what it is?
Sure, Jody. And, you know, it's interesting we're even having this debate of whether to include this in the CR to put the funding levels into March or April. The SAVE Act puts verification into our voting system. If we don't have open and fair elections, we don't have a republic. We don't have a free republic anymore. And I expect the Democrats to say no. They've been opposed to photo voter ID. They want any alien to be able to vote. That's why the invasion at the border is taking place. And what the SAVE Act does is put penalties for federal officials who don't strictly go by the book to request some type of verification, driver's licenses and other things that they attest to. And then there's a question in time to check these things out. And that's what didn't happen in 2020, where, you know, the election was you couldn't contest it because it didn't have time. Now we've got the time to do it. I know South Carolina has written a letter to the Immigration Records Division to make sure that we get the last year of any new registered voters so we can use the database to make sure they are who they are, and that when they check the box that they're an American citizen is true. And, you know, anything else, Jody, you know, for Schumer and I assume McConnell will join in that they're going to shut the government down, that should not be a question at all. If they want to shut it down on having fair elections, then so be it. But this is the first time that anything really has confronted what the Biden administration has allowed to happen, which are 12 to who knows how many millions of illegals in this country. And the purpose, and they're doing it in South Carolina, they're doing it in your home state of Georgia. They're flying them in on our dime and have them check the box and then vote when they shouldn't be. And we're trying to get to the bottom of it, and the SAVE Act does that.
Well, and it just still is a head scratcher to me why anyone would oppose this. Why would anyone be opposed to making sure that only American citizens are voting in our federal elections? It's unbelievable. What do you say to those, Congressman Norman, who make the claim that the SAVE Act would make it more difficult for eligible voters to even register?
Well, the SAVE Act has qualifications. If you're disabled, they make allowances for that. But they use all the available databases that the government has to make sure you are who you say you are and that you've been in this country legally, not illegally. And so, it shouldn't even be a point of contention, Jody, at all, because the verification has to be there. It's like, we're saying I can tell the police all day long I go 55 miles an hour, but let's see what the radar says. All we're saying, all the SAVE Act does is puts the radar in place to prove it, and holds those accountable to who are checking it to make sure they're not doing as we recently found out North Carolina has done. Registered let over 250,000 illegals vote in North Carolina, which has early voting.
Unbelievable. Well, I'm glad you brought up the whole thing with the speed limit, because I know one of the issues I heard a lot when I was there in Congress with you, especially in the Oversight Committee when we were going through all those hearings on election reform. They always said there are already laws that prevent non-citizens from voting in federal elections. But I mean, look, there are already laws that says you can't go over 55 miles an hour, too. But people do it all the time. Just because a law says you can't vote if you're illegal does not mean it's not going to happen, and especially when we have a government right now seemingly doing everything they can to encourage it. What do you say to those people who say there's already laws for this?
Well, I would challenge anybody to, yes, there are laws, but what's the verification? What's the process? We don't know how many people in this country. That's the little known fact that's not reported. We don't know. Is it 12 million? Is it 20 million? Is it more? And the borders have been open, as you know, from the day one that the Biden administration took office. And they're doing it to control power. They will do anything, including illegally voting illegals, to retain power. We just can't buy the argument or let them have the leverage to say, okay, we're going to shut the government down and you're going to pay political consequences. They should pay political consequences, because any American should be for that, but the Democrats are not, because it worked for them before and they want it to work again this time.
Absolutely. Well, I know the SAVE Act passed before, bipartisan, had some Democrat support as well. Do you have any predictions as we move forward?
Well, the good news, I think Mike Johnson, I think he's going to, all indications are he's going to include it. Regardless of the rhetoric that comes from the left, he's going to include it in the CR. He'll put it in March when we'll have, hopefully, the House, Senate, and executive branch. So I applaud him for doing it, but we've got to stay with it. There's no retreat or any deal to make by not having the SAVE Act in there and in law and making them vote on it. And if they in good conscience can cast a vote against it under the guise of shutting a government down that's out of control anyway, Jody. I mean, for us, the spending that we're doing is to build walls in other countries, to pay for illegals coming here for the crimes they're doing, paying for the crimes of those committed by the illegals. No, we can't buy that. We've got to stick tight on it.
Got to stick tight. It is a big leverage. Like you said, without it, there's nothing to stand for. Congressman Ralph Norman, South Carolina, always great to hear your voice. Thanks for joining us again on Washington Watch.